George and Tony here from the Realty Shop, and we want to address some questions that we're running into with a lot of our buyers and sellers. We really think if we help educate the public, they can make better and more informed decisions when it comes to buying and selling. So some of these topics we're running into right now are terms like seller's market, hot market, low inventory, low interest rates, and the list goes on, but really I think there's a few things that we could take away from today that would really help buyers and sellers. So George, what would you narrow that down to?
Yeah, so I think the three things that we should really focus on are the fact that we're in a hot seller's market and how we got there, how to sell and buy in the market, and then why it's more important to have an agent now more than ever.
So George, what is a seller's market and why is it hot?
Yeah, so typically when we're looking at the market as real estate agents, we're looking at absorption rate, months of inventory, right? So an equal market would be 6 months. A buyer's market would be more than 6 months. Less than 6 months, the closer you get to 1 month, is a seller's market, right? And so right now what we're looking at in the 350 and below, which is your first time home buyer bracket, we're looking at less than a month of inventory. And that goes almost all the way up to 800,000. So almost every area, St. Louis City, St. Louis County, Jefferson County, St. Charles, we're somewhere in that range of a month and a half all the way to half a month of inventory. So months of supply, that's your absorption rate. That's basically if 0 homes come on the market in a month, all the inventory is gone. That's how quickly buyers are purchasing homes right now. Yeah, so I would say the reason homes are going under contract so quickly is that, a couple things. Pricing, it's correct. Condition, it's correct. Marketing, staging, they're all there because your buyer's looking for turnkey, right? 90% of our first-time home buyers, they're looking to close on Friday, move in over the weekend, and then go back to work on Monday.
So George, you mentioned right now it's definitely a seller's market. Inventory's low, but at work and with family and friends, I'm having buyers that are submitting offers 10 to 20% over asking price, and they're still getting rejected. What do you think's causing that right now?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with exhausted buyers, right? So we have so much more buyers in the market than we do inventory. And those buyers are exhausted from writing 1, 2, 3 offers, and they find a lot of value in owning a home. And so they're waiving contingencies, such as your appraisal, your inspection, your financing, and they're going over list price.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I know we're going to talk about this more briefly in a second, but interest rates are still historically low. So they're getting more buying power by having their money go further because they're spending less on interest and spending more on building equity into their home. So their money's going further right now for sure.
Right, so not only is their money going further with low interest rates, historically it's low, right? So think back to 2018. I bought a house, I paid 4.5% interest rate, and the inventory was low then too. So we've had a trend of a seller's market for the last several years. So this isn't new to 2021 or 2020, but we've had a trend of a seller's market, and now things are tightening up even more because of demand.
So George, we just addressed that it's for sure a seller's market. Interest rates are lower, supply is low, demand is high. Now, what are the benefits to buying into this market right now? Because what we're hearing is people are spending $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 over asking price. Why would you do that?
Well, Tony, I think that's a good question on why you would buy in this market. And first of all, it's important to buy for the right reasons, right? Not to try to capitalize on a market that may be appreciating, but buying for your needs, right? Does it fit what you're looking for? If you're moving up, make sure it fits your needs. If you're leasing and you want ownership, make sure you're buying a house and you're going to stay here for the next 5 to 7 years. But the other big benefit is that you're buying into an appreciating market, because this trend will more than likely continue. If we look at the facts, the data, mortgage applications historically are up and have been climbing for the last several years. Inventory has been down for the last several years. So I think the biggest benefit is buying into an appreciating market with low interest rates. So if interest rates go up, more than likely next year, you're going to be buying a house that's more expensive and you're going to pay more in interest rate.
Right, just to piggyback on top of that, if we take today's dollars and then move them to next year, let's say we buy next year when the interest rate is higher, now we're spending more money going towards interest that we're just throwing away, that we're giving to the lender, versus money that's going to be spent on equity into our home. So yeah, the purchase price might be more now, but it's less interest that we're paying over the long term of the 15 to 30 year, depending on the loan type you get. So it's something important to think about, is it might be more expensive up front right now, the purchase price, but as far as with interest being low, it's a big difference over the long span of 15 to 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're looking at a house and you have a plan maybe 7 or 8 years, that's most of our buyers. It's usually a 7 to 8 year house, and then they want to move up. Well, if you're buying now in an appreciating market with a lower interest rate, you're going to pay down that principal over the next 7 years faster than if you decide to wait a year to purchase, where you're going to pay more on the purchase price and interest. It's going to take you longer to pay down that principal, and you're going to have less for that next house.
George, I think we did a great job of sharing what a strong seller's market looks like, the benefits of buying in a strong market, but now I really want to help sellers out. I think once we share this information and help people make an informed decision on how to sell their home, they're going to see the benefits of selling today versus waiting. So here is a statistic that Zillow just put out, and it says that annual appreciation rose to 10.6%, the largest jump in 15 years. Zillow forecasts 6.4 million homes to sell in 2021. That's up 13.5% from 2020. And it's the strongest year for sales since 2006. And they expect home values to rise 10.4% over the next 12 months. George, with that type of information, how can I sell right now? It sounds like it's the perfect time to sell.
So yeah, this is a great time to sell, right? And we're going into the busiest months of the year for real estate. And we're coming off of a strong seller's market. We see evidence that that's going to continue. You're ready to sell, and there's a few things that you really need to be prepared for. Yes, it's a seller's market, but that doesn't mean we can price it for $1 million, right? We still have to price it correctly, because when we're looking at from the buyer's perspective, they don't walk into houses that are overpriced. So pricing is very important. Condition of the house, obviously it needs to be painted. You don't want things falling apart. You want it as turnkey as possible. It doesn't have to be as upgraded as possible, but as turnkey as possible. And then to make sure you have a great marketing team behind you, such as, the Realty Shop has an incredibly strong marketing team that we use to market our sellers' properties.
Thanks for that, George. But another question that comes to mind when I think about selling right now in this market and capitalizing on the gains that you'd get from selling your home, from the appreciation over year, and not only that, just taking advantage of the seller's market, there's still questions that come to mind that I think sellers should be aware of, or that are at least asking me already. And some of these are, what if I can't sell right away? I don't want to be homeless. I don't want 2 house payments. Do I have to sell first, or can I buy first? How can I afford to buy a house without selling my home first? And then what's a home sale contingency?
So I think those are all fair questions, right? If you're financing, it's important to work with an experienced lender that knows your entire profile on what your plans are, what your goals are. So the lenders that I work with, we have those discussions. So if you're thinking about buying and selling at the same time, first we have to determine whether or not you can actually afford 2 payments. If you can't, you may have to sell first before you can purchase. Now, if you can afford 2 payments at once, there's a couple things to consider. First, it's about 90 days between contract to first payment. Not contract to close, but contract, once you're under contract, until your first payment comes up. So a lot of my clients that I've worked with over the last year, what we'll end up doing is that they'll actually buy first, and they'll prep their house while they're searching, or once they go under contract, to list it for sale. So as soon as they move into their next house, their house is on the market and we have a contract on it, so it makes things a lot less stressful.
So realistically, if I was to sell today and buy tomorrow, I still have a 90-day window, or vice versa, if I buy today, and then I'm not really going to see that second mortgage payment, most likely for 90 days.
Yeah, that's right. So you're not going to see that mortgage payment until about 90 days. Now, again, that's all dependent on your lender and what your closing costs would be. But in most cases, most of the clients that I'm working with, that is the strategy we're using because of how competitive the market is. You know, even a year and a half ago, home sale contingencies were still used. Now they're really putting the buyer at a disadvantage because
what is a home sale contingency?
Yeah, so a home sale contingency essentially says, look, I'm writing an offer on your house. Once we go under contract, this contract is contingent upon me selling and closing the current house that I have in order for me to actually afford to be able to close on the one that I'm buying.
Okay, just to touch base on it again, if someone wants to sell, but they're worried they're not going to be able to find a house fast enough because we are in a seller's market, their house is most likely, if it's priced correctly, it's going to go quickly. What happens if they sell and they can't find a house to buy because they're getting beat by all these other offers? Then they become homeless almost.
Right, so it's important to have a plan in place before you list your house, right? So what are your goals? So if you do plan to buy, we're gonna sell first. You have a couple options. First option, temporary housing, right? Until you land on the next house. That's a great option for some people. And then you also, because there's so much demand, buyers are willing to wait. So you can actually list your house, put it under contract, and buyers will wait until you find your next house because that's how much demand is in the market right now.
So when you say have a plan in place for temporary housing, does that mean renting an apartment? Does that mean staying at mom and dad's house, moving in with friends? What would temporary housing be?
Yeah, so believe it or not, moving in with mom and dad, that's an option,
yeah.
Right? I mean, if you want to capitalize on the market, you may need to move somewhere temporarily, such as mom and dad's or friend's house. I have had clients do that. There's also short-term renting where you can lease for 6 months to 3 months. That's definitely an option too.
George, I think this has been a super helpful conversation for buyers and sellers, especially navigating this tough market right now. But I think that brings us to our last section that we wanted to cover, and that's why using an agent right now is more important than ever.
Yeah, so not only is it important to use an agent, but you want to use an agent that's experienced and has an entire team behind them. Real estate is really too complicated of a transaction to be a solo agent, which I was for a period of time. And having the Realty Shop behind me, which we have a director of operations, our owner, of course, and then our transaction coordinator, that doesn't allow any balls to be dropped. And that keeps not only the transaction seamless, but also stress-free.
So I want to park on the marketing for a second, George, because that's where I originally came in to the team in 2019 was doing photos of homes, taking video walkthroughs in 2020 during COVID to help get buyers into homes without having to actually step in them. So for the most part, if you list your home with Realty Shop, as long as you choose to have them done, which we highly recommend you do, you're going to get professional photos not only taken by me or two of our other photographers, but you're also going to have them professionally edited. And 90% of the time, they're flipped in 24 hours. So you're going to have your home on the market, coming soon pictures, whatever it is that you're getting done to your house for the marketing standpoint, turned around ASAP. And I think that's just something strong that Realty Shop has going for it, because not only do they have this team of marketing people behind it, but they have also opened a separate sister company called Realty Shots, where we specialize in just marketing homes, commercial buildings, anything from photo to live stream. It's a whole different part of the company that's just dedicated to film and photo. So I think that's a really strong piece of marketing for our buyers and sellers.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that, not only are you guys marketing on the MLS and Zillow, but we also have internal marketing that we do. We have 4,000 plus buyers that were actively looking for homes that we have in our database. And so anytime that we take on a listing, we usually have buyers for that house pretty much as soon as the house is ready to go. And so I think that's an important component as well to the Realty Shop. I tour houses, pretty much every day for the most part. And one of the comments that clients make is that the house is usually a little bit smaller than what the pictures are. And I have to remind them that, if the pictures weren't professional, you probably wouldn't walk into the house, because professional pictures tell a story too, that the seller is motivated and ready to sell, and there's someone that you want to work with in buying the house. So I think that's important. Also, if the pictures were tiny and just cell phone pictures, it just doesn't paint the house in the best light, right?
No, I agree. That actually happened with my home. When we bought in 2017, we actually were deterred from the pictures of the home because they were on an iPhone. It was dimly lit. Everything looked grungy. And just the house looked really crummy. And then we actually did a home tour, and I was like, wow, I like this so much more than I thought I would. And that's just one of the benefits of having professionals do the marketing side of your photo and video. And pictures are just part of the equation of marketing for these homes. But when you're able to stage a home, which we have many vendors that we work with that we can recommend, you can't expect the buyer to walk into a home that's empty, that they've just seen pictures of, and fill in the gaps with where the couch is gonna go. And they can a little bit imagine, but sure, they're a little overwhelmed with the process of looking at the home, taking it all in. When you have that professionally staged, I feel like that sets your home apart from other homes that are on the market.
Yeah, I think with staging, whether it's virtually or in person, which I think is probably the best thing to do, it really gives the buyer an opportunity to not nitpick the house apart, because you can find issues with any house, new construction too. You can find issues, right? But with staging, it allows them to see how the flow of the house can actually be and what it would look like if they had their furniture there. So I think staging is really important for that.
So to sum it all up, George, now we're looking for an agent who has experience, who's gonna really help us get the top dollar for our home sale. What does an experienced agent look like?
So I think, as a seller, it's important to have an agent that's gonna give you honest feedback. Right? You don't want to sit on the market. You don't want to have expectations that are completely blown away by buyers. You need to have an agent that's going to give you honest feedback about the house, issues that maybe need to be fixed, because there's plenty of clients that I recommend to them to make repairs or updates to get more money. That's the goal, right? To get as much money as we can without completely upgrading the house. And then the second part of that is for an agent to really run the comps. Right? Not just pull square footage, not just pull 2 beds, 3 beds, whatever's comparable, right?
And what's a comp?
So comparable home sales with a market analysis. And so a couple things that I'm looking at, and it really depends on the price point, right? So as we mentioned earlier, $350 and below, that's our first time home buyer bracket. Those are the people that are more than likely going to finance. So we have to take that appraisal into consideration too. And so when we're looking at comparable home sales, we have to try to find what an appraiser is going to use to make that value so that way they can get their loan. So it's also important for the agent to have a good strategy for the seller to get top dollar, right? So whether that's staging or timing on the market, those are pretty important too. So when we're looking at the market, we're looking not just at what the house sold for, right? The other comparable home sales, but we're also looking at our competition. Okay, if we want to get top dollar, especially in this market where inventory is kind of coming on and then going off, timing is part of that equation to get the most money for your house. Because you don't want to come up against 3-4 other houses that are exactly like yours. That's going to pull your value down, even in a strong seller's market.
Yeah, I think strategy is part of the equation for sure. And I know at the Realty Shop, you're going to get that with our agents. You have seasoned agents who have been doing this their whole career. You have newer agents who are being mentored by these seasoned agents. And then you have just a 99% approval rating from our customers, which I think is amazing. We're a top 5 brokerage in St. Louis with over $800 million in sales to this day. Like, that's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only is it impressive, but you're reassured that we have the experience that you're looking for to get top dollar, even in a seller's market, where some people, as they've come through my open house and told me, you just have to throw it online, right? Well, no, there is a strategy that you want in place, and we do have that strategy to get you top dollar.
George, I think that about does it for today. I think we really hit our goals today of just having a conversation to helping inform buyers and sellers with what a hot market is and why it favors sellers right now, how to sell and buy in this market, and why having an agent is now more important than ever. So we hope this was informative. If you have any more questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to George or I. I will post our information on a graphic right after this video. And again, we're with the Realty Shop, and we just hope that we're able to make the process easy and smooth and stress-free for you, whether you're buying or selling in the future. So thanks for your time.
2 dudes doing real estate. That'll be the end.